Good evening. After a hiatus of sorts, I have returned. Took a bit of time off, played some Elden Ring, played some Wrath of the Righteous, and now I'm kind of back. I actually unsubscribed and now I've resubscribed to ESO. Update 35, update 36 were kind of garbage-ish, in my opinion. Performance, also garbage-ish of late. Performance-wise, probably my number one complaint about the game. It's just Cyrodiil in prime time, essentially unplayable. I'm on PS5. Got tired of skills not firing and teleporting around every time I tried to move, and the lag and just dying, pausing. Unplayable during prime time, essentially. Even today, playing in Battlegrounds, there was some lag, or the game froze in a normal dungeon today. Just doing a daily dungeon, normal, I think it was Crypt of Hearts 2. Just completely froze for like 30 seconds, and then, apparently we were fighting a mini boss, and I didn't know that because my character was just frozen. So I don't think it's any better than a couple of months ago when I left, but as far as the game itself, I don't really care for the hybridization and the homogenization. I think it just I liked when there were more stamina and Magicka versions of each class, and just offered, I think, more variety, and it was more fun. I mean, that's the main thing. Is it fun or not? I think it's less fun when every character you make in PvP has to use, vigor, and has to be, like two-handed sword and dual wield are basically better in every content than a staff. Even in PvE, PvP, I think it's kind of dumb. I don't really care for it, but I would say that if performance was good, I wouldn't really care as much about those things, because performance is the number one complaint I have with the game, and the sort of direction of the game, the rebalancing, the class direction, skill direction, the nerfing of dots, etc., is my number two complaint. But having said all that, after playing other games for several months, there's just still something about ESO that I missed, particularly the PvP. And the way it's just fun despite all those things. And there is really no other on play. I do have a PC, but I primarily focus on PlayStation primarily for portability reasons. I take my PlayStation out of my house at times, and that's why I stick with PlayStation. There's not much else on PlayStation that offers a PvP experience that is as good as this one, despite the performance issues and despite the gameplay direction of the game itself. And I know ZeniMax now says they're going to sort of reevaluate whatever. I don't really believe anything they say as far as anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, if the game is not fun, I don't play it for a while. I took a break, played some other things, and I kind of missed some things about it despite everything. And I'm having some fun now again playing it. Maybe I just needed some time off to look at what else is out there, etc. So anyway, I have I'm still going to call it a Magicka Dragonknight. It's primarily like a magic class. Obviously, it uses a few more stamina skills than in the past. That's just the nature of the game now, which is fine, because it is kind of cool in some ways. But so about what is this build? Magicka Dragonknight PvP build. It is not an easy build. This is, I guess, it does not leave that much room for error. It's a very hard-hitting, damage-focused, non-tanky build. Now, non-tanky in the traditional sense. I mean, you don't have high health, you don't have high resistances, but it has very high weapon damage, and that makes its healing very strong, and the healing kit of a Dragonknight is strong anyway. So it is sometimes hard to die, but it is not an easy build to play, and it is not terribly forgiving. If you do not keep your buffs up, if you get too aggressive and don't swap back to your back bar because you're going for that sweaty kill, and you let all your healing fall off, you will perhaps die fairly easily. It's also it is decent in dueling, or it is good in dueling, and it is okay at 1vx, but it is more of a group utility build. In addition to high damage and being good at just killing one person, if you go on one, if you fight 4 wardens, you're not going to win if they know what they're doing. But in a group, a small group, it does provide a lot of a decent amount of group utility. So it's a little bit more focused on that than some other builds I've made in the past. But so it's a lot of fun, in my opinion, even though it may not be. I've been playing Stamina Warden and Magicka Dragonknight primarily the last couple of weeks. Warden is just incredibly hard to die. I'm playing, I guess pretty standard Stamina Warden build with sets that are not, terribly inventive, and it has a lot of damage and a lot of survivability. So this build is not like that. It's more of I wouldn't call it a glass cannon. I mean, no one's gonna kill you in one hit or anything like that, but it's a lot harder to survive on this build. But I find it more fun just because I don't know, I've always been a Dragonknight type of fan. So let's get into it. A couple things right off the bat. So this is as I say, it's not very traditional in some of the ways in which I built it. We're a Magicka Dragonknight with 64 points in magic. As far as race, actually let me show you that this is the front bar. Dual wield Resto Staff, which I know Resto Staff is kind of out of favor. 64 in magic. High Elf. I don't know that High Elf is the best race. I'm just tired of having to be, a Khajiit crit monster, or the other popular ones are Orc, I guess. Imperial, I think Imperial would probably be better than High Elf for this. But this is my main Dragonknight character, and I wanted to, roleplay reasons, appearance. I've always liked High Elf for Magic Dragonknight. So I went with High Elf for the weapon damage bonus. The race doesn't matter that much. Pick whatever race you think is best for you and adjust your food or glyphs accordingly. But the High Elf, I think, feeds into the overall theme of the build, which is stacking weapon damage. 64 points in magic. Unique things to note: we are not a vampire. Again, you have to be a stage 3 vampire to be successful in PvP. I would say it's definitely very strong, but I'm tired of being a vampire in every character. Yes, it's strong. The Undeath passive is good, but I mean, it's almost just for appearance's sake. I'm just tired of being a vampire, tired of being a horrible, hideous monster on every character I make, and so I just wanted to try a non-vampire. So that's what I've done. And then, as you'll see, if you look at our stats, I think my food just ran out. Yes, I was gonna say my health is low, but it's not that low. Okay. So 2 options for food right off the bat: Witch Mother's Potent Brew or Jewels of Misrule. Okay. And you can also use their more expensive counterparts. Smoked Bear Haunch and Clockwork Citrus Fillet would be the alternative to this. If you have the money, the gold, go ahead and use the more expensive foods. You will get slightly better stats and a little bit of health recovery for doing that. I made a video a while back kind of explaining that 10 times the cost for 200 more resources and 30 more recovery is probably not worth it 99% of the time. The fact that this build is not a vampire makes the health recovery a little more valuable than if you were a vampire, in which the difference between the gold and the purple food is even less. But as you can see, our health recovery is not going to be super high no matter what we do. So use the cheaper food and you'll be totally fine. If you have millions of gold, then obviously, there's no disadvantage to using the gold food. But Jewels of Misrule will just give you a little bit better stamina sustain, and that translates to a little bit more tankiness and ability to escape damage. Witch Mother's Potent Brew just gives you a little bit more magic. I swap back and forth. I think I prefer the jewels, but it's not a big difference. So use whichever food you prefer. And so let's eat some food and show you the actual stats. So we'll go with my preferred option, which I've been using mostly. So again, 30k health is considered the meta. I'm in regular environment, not in Cyrodiil. So these are, you know, the sort of regular stats you'll see in Cyrodiil. 26.5 health. Now, so again, it's not the most survivable of builds. You're relying on your high weapon damage and your healing, your strong healing to keep you alive, as well as skill, dodging. We don't block a lot. We do a decent amount of dodging, but we're primarily using our healing to keep us alive, and picking our fights carefully. As I say, if you're in a 4-on-1, you're going to need to kite, withdraw, isolate 1 or 2 people and kill them, and then, you know, resume the fray. You're not going to be a stamina warden taking on 5 people at the same time and coming out successful. So the health may seem low, but it is adequate. This build can kill people. Do not worry too much. 28 magic. Now, if you want to take a few points out of magic and put them in health, you know, that would probably be fine. Stamina, I'm sure, looks low. Usually people want a little more than that, but again, High Elf does have a stamina passive, a stamina recovery passive I'll show in a second, but, you know, 14,000 it's adequate, more or less, because as I say, we're not blocking a ton, we're not dodge rolling a ton, we do sprint a bit, but I just decided on this build to go full-on damage and not worry too much about sustain and other things. You can always heavy attack with the Restless Staff if you need magic, heavy attack with the dual wield if you need stamina back. So you have those options. The recoveries you see there are, you know, they are what they are. Again, we rely on heavy attacks a little bit. I mean, I'm not heavy attacking all day long. And then obviously Dragonknight with the Battle Roar passive, which I'll show later. When you use your ultimate, you regain health, magic, and stamina. I'm sure everyone knows that. So we do obviously rely on that as well to help our sustain. The weapon damage is 4. Let's just buff up. We get minor and major brutality on this build. We have major and minor courage on this build. We have some sets that are increasing our weapon damage. And we have a glyph. So if we just basically buff up like that, we're going to go to 56, 55. This build will get close to 8,000 spell damage. I'm sorry, weapon damage. If everything is procced at the same time, which is not, you know, anywhere near 100% of the time, but we have a lot of weapon damage, and I'll try to show that later on I'll try to, you know, I don't have add-ons on PlayStation, so it's a little harder to get a picture of the exact moment when my spell damage is at the maximum. I keep saying spell damage, it's weapon damage. When you're but I'll try to show more buffed up the true potential of the weapon damage. You're going to be around 6,500 a lot of the time, and you get up to 7,500 and even higher some of the time. For anyone who doesn't know, on a Dragonknight you stack weapon damage, not spell damage, because you have this right here, which gives you minor brutality, increasing your weapon damage by 10%. So we may take advantage of that and stack weapon damage. As far as other basic things, I was playing Battlegrounds for a couple days without a Mundus Stone. When they changed the armor character guy and I reloaded my build, I didn't realize that they had, I guess I knew this, but I just forgot. They added Mundus Stones into the armorer. So when I reloaded the build, when I came back after 3 months not playing or something, however long it was, I had no Mundus Stone. And I'm doing Battlegrounds, doing pretty well. And then I realized, wait, I have no Mundus Stone. So that means to me, you can pick any Mundus Stone you want, because the build was decent in Battlegrounds with no CP without a Mundus Stone. So I decided, I thought about it, and, you know, you could pick the Warrior for more weapon damage, but we have plenty of that already, but that's obviously not a bad choice. You could pick the Serpent if you think you need more magic sustain. You could pick the Atronach or Serpent for stamina sustain. Atronach if you thought you needed more stamina sustain. God, I say that backwards again. Atronach for magic, Serpent for stamina if you think you need more sustain. I don't really think you do. So I decided, well, the penetration on this build is not super high. We don't have breach at all. I don't believe. Let me just check something. Yeah, so our penetration is not that great. So I figured, why not go with the Lover? 3,000 more penetration. So go with whatever Mundus Stone you want, because the build functions quite decently with no Mundus Stone at all, if you happen to forget, like I did. So you have a lot of flexibility there to just, you know, depending on your playstyle or whatever you think is lacking for your situation, use a Mundus Stone that complements or, you know, provides whatever you think is missing in the build for you. We do have Major Prophecy and Major Strategy up on our front bar. We'll get into that in a second. So I think that's all the sort of to just go over. So like I said, with the lover, we get about 10.6 penetration, which is okay. You know, it's not. Hopefully, you have a teammate providing major or minor breach for you, which is not present on this build. So that's why I chose the lover, just because I felt that was one area where, you know, we were lacking. Our crit is decent, I would say, for a completely non-crit focused build. And that's pretty much it. Crit resistance, not super high, so just be aware that, you know, Nightblades are always dangerous. But most of the Nightblades I fight on a one-on-one wind up running away, so I don't really worry about them too much. So yeah, let's get into the sets. The sets are not terribly unique. I did not invent this, but it works quite well. Again, with the goal of damage, stacking that weapon damage. So Burning Spell Weave on the front bar, dual wield. We'll go with 2 maces, again, for penetration. Nirnhoned on one hand and Charge on the other for status effects and for sustain via the what is it called? Combustion passive. So Dragonites have combustion passive. When you apply burning, you get magic back. When you apply poison, which we're not using, unfortunately, you get stamina back. So this just increases our status effect uptimes and secondarily gives us a little bit of sustain. And Nirnhoned, again, we're just trying to get our weapon damage as high as possible. So we use a flame enchant, burning status effect. Shock enchant gives us the concuss status effect, gives minor vulnerability. And then we have a couple other burning spell pieces. It doesn't really matter. Just to go, we are in 4 light, 1 medium, and 2 heavy. You could mix and match this. I wound up with this a long time ago, and I've just been sticking with it because it just seems to work. You could do, 1 more piece of heavy or medium if you wanted to stack weapon damage even higher. But, so front bar burning spell, as I mentioned. Back bar, we're going with Olarime or Olarime, I don't know how you say it. With, Olarime just gives us the major courage, essentially 100% of the time, and provides it to your group. So that's what I'm talking about, the group buff. It's a nice buff to give everybody. It's easy to proc with our skills. Oh, and just, if you don't know what Burning Spell does, it's also easy to proc. We have about a very high uptime of this. It gives us 478 additional weapon damage. All you have to do is deal damage with a flame, with any kind of flame source. I believe it works with skill, enchant, anything. So that's up a lot. It stays with you when you go to your back bar. So it's great. It's just a basic, easy to proc, simple to use damage set. And it does apply the burning status effect on top of that as well. And so it's a 4-second downtime, which means I believe it's about, it's essentially up 75% of the time. So it's a nice long burst window. This one gives you the major courage, which if you look at the numbers there, it's essentially the cooldown is 0. You can have it up all the time because it lasts longer than the 10. It lasts for 20 seconds, and you can proc it every 10 seconds. And again, it's very easy to keep up. It is a buff on the ground that stays with you for 20 seconds if you move, and obviously when you go to the front bar, it stays with you. So it's a great. These sets are very nice, complement each other as far as what we're trying to do, increasing your damage and your healing by buffing your weapon damage as high as possible. The other, Max Magicka, more weapon damage, critical chance, Magicka Recovery, which is nice because it's not that high on this. The 3-piece is essentially useless in PvP, unfortunately, but it's made up for, I think, by the Magicka Recovery on the 5-piece and the 5-piece, which is very strong. So those are your 2 5-piece sets. I'm using Magma Incarnate still. You could use Bloodspawn. You could use Balorg. Because I'm using Vigor, this gives you Minor Resolve. It's a little bit redundant. I tried Bloodspawn, and so what does this set do? Let's start there, actually. Go back a little. Gives you nice recovery, which I really like, because, again, we don't have a ton of recovery on the build, which you would lose with Bloodspawn, although you would gain ultimate regeneration and defense. Balorg would just give you more straight damage. I think the recovery here is very valuable when considering the rest of the build, and it gives minor courage to you and your ally. So that's very nice. If you give it to yourself, because here it gives your whole group these buffs, you're kind of being redundant. If you're solo, you're getting minor resolve from 2 different sources. I mean, the benefit is that it's going to be up essentially 100% of the time. You could argue that that makes Magma Incarnate less useful because one of its buffs is you're already getting it from a skill. But I think the other buffs and the group utility of this set, based on what I've done with testing and trying 2 other monster sets, I wind up coming back to this every time. I just think it's very useful and very strong. But if you want to use something else, obviously you can. But that's why I'm sticking with this. We do have 1 piece of trainee. We have a free slot, so it gives us extra health. Health all in this build is already not that high, as I mentioned, so that's useful. And then the final piece is a mythic. I'm Mark and Ring of Majesty, gives you additional weapon damage and some armor. I've used the Sea Serpent Coil, and I've tried it on multiple characters, multiple classes, and I just can't. It's very strong, but it's okay. I don't like the snare, bottom line. I just can't. I've tried it with Swift and with other skills to mitigate the snare and blah, 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 but I don't really care for it. I think speed is more valuable than more damage, and this build hits very hard already. But again, if you prefer Sea Serpent, it's obviously very strong. Use whatever mythic you want, but this complements the build, just giving us more weapon damage, 200 more and 2300 more armor. As far as the traits and such, as I mentioned, 4 light, 1 medium, 2 heavy. I don't think I mentioned this. I go with powered on the back bar just for more healing. As I mentioned, this build depends on healing to stay alive. I don't block very much or at all really. So I mean, you could use defending, I suppose, and we go with a weapon damage glyph, berserker glyph, so you can, basically what you're going to do is light attack and then cast. Well, I'll go over that later, how to proc the things, but anyway. Then we have 1, 2, 3 tri-stats, and 4 magic glyphs. Okay, so it should be on the big pieces. I don't know why. Interesting. So, again, if you want, adjust your glyphs to whatever stats you think you need. If you think you need more health, more stamina, more magic, I showed you the stats before, and that's what I've been running with. It would probably be better to move this and put it on the legs, just more efficient that way if you're going to use a triglyph, but that's what I have for now. I don't, it's not a huge difference either way. And then we have 2 reinforced, 1 well-fitted. This should be changed to either impenetrable or well-fitted, but impenetrable is back on the meta. We have a lot of crit damage builds all over the place, particularly Nightblades and Wardens, because they get crit buffs. And then, of course, Templars as well. Everyone is Jesus beaming you for 10,000 points of damage. So having impen is important now, where it was not perhaps last year that much. But so 1, 2, 3 impen, 2 reinforced on the heavy pieces, and 1 well-fitted. And I would change this again to whatever you think you need. The well-fitted is okay. As I said, I don't really dodge roll that much, but a 5% decrease in cost is pretty nice. You could go with 2 well-fitted, or just add another impen piece, right? Or change this to either well-fitted or impen. I just haven't bothered because I don't think it's that big of a difference. The jewelry, 2 infused weapon damage, 1 arcane weapon damage. Again, if you think you don't necessarily need that 847 magic, you can make this infused. I just haven't bothered. I don't think it's, again, not a big deal whether you have, a little more weapon damage or a little more magic. As I said, the sustain on this build is a little bit tight at times, so I did want to have a little bit more magic and I've been sticking with this one arcane glyph for that reason. But if you want more damage, just change it to a infused weapon damage glyph, because you're missing out on like about 150 weapon damage. So that is that. As far as the skills, again, nothing revolutionary here, I don't think. I go with Fossilize, one of the best stuns in the game. It also procs your passives. This one, whenever you cast Fossilize, you gain Minor Brutality, and you gain some Alter Generation, and you get stamina back. I've tried Shattering Rocks, the other morph of this. I don't think the heal is that strong, personally. Most people prefer that morph, so you can use it, absolutely. I value the double crowd control. You get the stun, and then you get the immobilize to burn through the enemy's stamina. I've tried the other one. I still prefer this, but use whatever you prefer. Very good skill, unblockable, procs those passives, etc. Engulfing Flames, direct damage, flame damage. It's kind of a pseudo spammable. Puts a decent dot on the enemy and increases your. I believe that'll go up when I buff up. Let's see. Yes, 6% increased damage from all your flame attacks. Okay, so I considered using the other one, but I don't know that I have the Noxious Breath, which is similar but is poison based and gives you a major breach. I don't know that the stamina sustained on this build would be able to handle that, so we stick with this one for flame damage and go with that. This is your burst / semi-spammable ability. Just to go over this, if you don't know, whenever you cast Engulfing Flames or Flames of Oblivion, you proc Seething Fury, which increases your weapon and spell damage. And when you have 3 stacks up, you then can cast... what is it called? Is it called power? I don't know what it's called. Seething Fury. Your next Molten Whip will be, significantly increased in damage. This is kind of your pseudo execute and helps you kill people. So we use Engulfing Flames and Flames of Oblivion as a sort of pseudo AoE spammable. This one more so because it's very cheap. This one, if you're in a group and they don't have it on them yet. And then when you're ready, you can leap, and then that leaping will preserve the the Seething Fury, and then you can whip with this to finish off your opponent. So this skill basically has your spammable and then your burst damage ability. This is something of a flex spot. I used to use Burning Embers here on Magicka Dragonknight for years. It's been nerfed so many times in terms of damage and the healing, and the cost is a lot more than it used to be. So I don't really... Where is it? I thought it was more expensive than that, but okay. It used to be like 1,000 magic. But anyway, you could use this. You could also use Venomous Claw, the other morph of this, which is more damage and is a stamina skill. I kind of, to try and balance the sustain between magic and stamina, I think having a stamina skill here is a good idea. So I would go with Venomous Claw or this. The reason I picked this is because it replaces Burning Embers with a heal. So it does the bleed damage about... Let me keep this buff up here. So about 5,000 on the direct damage initial hit with a 14.6 bleed over 20 seconds, and then every tick it heals you for 1,400. So it kind of is a stamina version replacement for Burning Embers, which I think is not as strong as it used to be. And this costs stamina, so it's a little gentler on our Magicka sustain, and it provides that healing, which I think is very important. You can put this on multiple people, so you have all that incoming healing as you're fighting, and then focus down one person. You also get the dual wield passives. I mean, so it does more damage against low health opponents. This is just for wielding dual wield, and then you get increased damage from that skill when you attack stunned or immobilized enemies. So I think it's quite valuable. It's a good skill. The dot is not super strong, I know that, but it's the healing and the fact that it costs stamina. But again, I've tried Venomous Claw, it's definitely very decent, and it procs the Seething Fury, unlike this. So there's something to be said for using that. You try them both, see what you prefer. Flames of Oblivion gives us our crit buff, Major Prophecy and Savagery, provides a pretty strong, it'll hit 4 times for every cast, multiple enemies, 7,000 each, and it procs the Seething Fury. So this is our kind of ranged AoE Seething Fury procking inexpensive spammable skill. You can kind of consider this is spammable, this is spammable, this is spammable, and this is spammable, depending on the situation. So you kind of got to play and practice to kind of get a feel for which skill you should cast at which particular time. You want to generally try to preserve this for when you have 3 stacks, so it will hit for maximum damage. But sometimes, if you just have someone in front of you who's at low health, you may whip over and over. And if the opponent is not dying, then get back to casting this, this, and this to buff up, leap if you can, and then finish them off with an empowered Seething Fury stacked Molten Whip. The ultimate, you have some options here. I keep coming back to this. Shifting Standard is good. Corrosive Armor is good, but they're very expensive. And when I need my Battle Roar passive, I'm depending as a Dragonite with minimal sustain and focusing on damage. I kind of need my ultimate to sustain my resources. And those ultimates are too expensive and not enough for my taste. If you look, this is 225 and this is 200 versus 125. So if you're in a group and your sustain is less of a concern, those ultimates are every Dragonite ultimate is good. They're all good skills. So play around with it, determine, what your group needs. If you're solo, if you're in a group, and use whatever ultimate you prefer. I just think this is very good. This is a slow character. I have no speed buff. So it provides a gap closer, hits pretty hard, especially if you're completely buffed up with Seething Fury and all your Major Courage, Minor Courage, Major Brutality, Minor Brutality. It hits very hard. It provides you a very big damage shield. So it's defensive. You jump into the fray and you have a little bit of protection for 6 seconds to help you not worry about healing while you try to finish off someone. So this is just a fun Dragonite Classic Ultimate that is very inexpensive. So that's the reason I use it. But those 2 other options are very strong as well. Do not get me wrong. I've been playing with Shifting Standard a little bit. It's very powerful. It's just not up as much. That's the thing. If you were using Bloodspawn instead of Magma Incarnate, then obviously that would change the uptime of these other strong ultimates. On the back bar ultimate, this is really the only... There's 2 reasons I'm using the Restless Staff, or 3 I suppose. You get the light attack pokes to proc your glyph and proc... and to build up ultimate. Then you have the heavy attacks, which, if you don't know, heavy attacking with a Restless Staff gives you a lot of magic back. So that's reason number 2 to use a Restless Staff. And reason number 3 is this ultimate. I think most people have switched to Sword and Shield because Vigor is better than Rapid Regeneration, at least when you're solo, 1vxing. But I just like the ranged option. Otherwise, I would be dual wield Sword and Shield and have no ability to attack people at range. And I'm a very slow... Dragonites are slow, and I'm not using a Major Expedition skill. So having the ability to attack at range with a strong healing ultimate, this will keep you or your ally alive. It casts these 3 abilities as well. So it's also very cheap. It's the same cost as Ferocious Leap. So depending on the situation, you will have both ultimates up at the same time and can use whichever one you think is appropriate. If you're about to die, then this is the one to go with. Although actually, if you're about to die, this can save you too. So you can switch this for Temporal Guard, for if you want to put Corrosive or Shifting Standard on the back bar and have 2 offensive ultimates, that's fine too. There's a lot of good choices for Dragonite Ultimate, but this is the one I use most of the time. This skill, again, Flex Spot, you could put, this is where people might put Race Against Time to have snare removal and Major Expedition. As I mentioned, this build is sort of non-meta. I'm not a vampire. I don't have super high health. I don't have a mobility skill, and I don't have a snare immunity skill. And I don't mind. I feel the build is strong enough to succeed without it, but that's why I say this is not a beginner build, because you're missing those things that make things a lot easier. But I just think this skill is so strong. First of all, we need it because it procs Olorime. To proc the set that we're using, you need a ground-based ability right here, casting an ability on the ground. So when you need something for that. So this procs your set. It also provides a very big snare to the enemy, so you can use it defensively. It provides very strong healing for you and your entire group. Again, that group utility I mentioned. And it procs, just like Fossilize, it procs your Earth and Heart passives. So it gives you your Minor Brutality and your Ultimate Regeneration back. And I don't think I mentioned this. You get stamina back when you use an Earth and Heart ability, and we have 3 Earth and Heart abilities on this build. So that is helping our stamina sustain, because as I mentioned, the stamina of this build is quite low. 14,000. So, and it's very cheap, 300 per second. You can recast it, because when you obviously in a mobile fight, you're going to want to be fighting on top of this as much as possible. So because it doesn't have an initial cost, it's just a 300 magic over time, you can move it and it costs you nothing to do that. So that's why I really like it, and I find playing without this, I value this skill more than Race Against Time or any other option. But you could drop it if you're in a group and you don't need the healing, and use Race Against Time, or if you were a vampire, Mist Form would be another good choice, or whatever else you think you need here. But I really like this skill. They changed it, several patches ago, made it, in my opinion, really, really good. Resolving Vigor, as I mentioned, every PvP build, I think more or less, needs this skill because it's so good. Provides, let me buff up again, and we're nowhere near fully buffed, but just to give you an idea, 21,000 over 5 seconds. It's going to get up to 25,000 when you're fully buffed, plus Minor Resolve for 20 seconds. So, what can you put here as a heal over time that's better than this? I don't know. It's just really good. And it costs stamina again to sort of reduce the strain on our Magicka pool. Coagulating Blood, again, super strong skill. Burst heal, base of 12,000, and we're not fully buffed again. And then plus 50%, up to 50% additional based on your missing health. It does give you that Major Fortitude, which is somewhat useless. Our health recovery is not super high, 457, who cares? But it does do that. The other thing it does, though, that is important is Burning Heart passive. Right here, we have 2 skills that will proc this, I believe. Actually, Leap does as well. 12% increased healing combined with our champion points and our powered Resto Staff. So our healing, as I mentioned, with our 6,500 to 7,500 or even 8,000 weapon damage, your healing is very strong. So you need to keep either this skill or this skill up at all times to give you that Burning Heart passive. So this is your burst heal, your heal over time, your other heal over time, your other heal over time. So that's why we don't need Shattering Rocks. And then this obviously is your healing ultimate. I don't think that's all there is to say about that. It's really the only burst heal option you have, but luckily it's quite good, so that's fine. Armor buff, every character needs one, so we're going to keep this up 100% of the time anyway. As I mentioned, it keeps up the Burning Heart passive, so you're going to want to keep it up. It gives you just, an additional 6,000 resistance. So we do have, as a, between Magma Incarnate and this, we can, wrong skill, Minor Resolve from this, Major Resolve from that, gives us, look at our resistances, almost 30k and 26.5. So I guess when I said this build is not super tanky, it is pretty tanky. It's got really strong healing and quite good resistances. And on the front bar, it's going to be the same. My buff fell off, of course. We're not depending on a defending Resto Staff to keep those resistances high. They're just high all the time. So we go with powered Resto Staff, as I mentioned. What else? It does provide that, it puts a dot on the enemy if you activate it within range, and then it returns damage to the enemy if they're in melee range. These are not massive numbers, but it just provides a little bit of tick, chip damage, whatever you want to call it. You could potentially go with the other morph. I've never been that big a fan. The damage shield is okay. It doesn't last very long. And I like to pre-buff. I don't wait until I'm in a fight to put this on. So if you use hardened armor as the other morph, if you buff up as you're walking into the fight, by the time you engage, the shield is gone anyway. So if you prefer that morph, go for it. But I prefer this one. And then here is, you want to have major brutality, obviously, right? A couple options. A potion. I much prefer tri-stat potions on this build. As I said, our resource sustain. I didn't mention that. I use tri-stat potions on this build almost exclusively, providing magic, stamina, and health, and magic, stamina, and health recovery. If you don't know what a tri-potion is, I don't know where you live, but I should have mentioned this earlier, but I did not. Why am I struggling to find this? Okay. You can use these from the Crown Store or craft them. They're essentially the same. I just think tri-stat potions are the best potion for this particular build. Therefore, I do not want to get my major brutality buff from a potion. Option 2 would be structured entropy. I think this skill is trash, personally. It's they nerfed it a year ago or sometime. The dot is very weak. You have to have a target, so you can't pre-buff. Again, this is what I do before I enter the fight. You're going to want to cast this to give you major and minor brutality, major resolve. You don't have to do this one, but then this gives you your minor resolve as well, and then I'm going to cast this for minor courage from Olorime, which is not proccing here because I'm not in combat. But you're going to want to do all that before you engage. If you depend on entropy for your major... I'm going to take a drink here. If you depend on entropy for your major brutality, you can't do that. You're going to run into battle and have to hit someone with this to get major brutality. I don't like that because the other benefits of the skill, which are this weak dot, I don't think it's that good. It's just another thing to worry about. I got to proc my buff first before I can get into my rotation. I prefer doing it with this. It only lasts for 24 seconds. This lasts for 72 seconds. So that's crazy. That's an eternity. You also get some you could use this because you're going to get 2% more magic and 2% more magic recovery. And Empower, as I understand it, doesn't work in PvP anymore anyway, even though it says against monsters. I don't think it works outside of PvE at all. And we're not really heavy attacking. So these small bonuses of entropy, I don't think it's a good skill anymore, so I don't use it. But you could if you prefer. So I use this just to give me, it procs, as you can see, because of the Earthen Heart passive, again, it procs both major and minor brutality with one skill. And then it gives you, as we already mentioned twice already with the two other skills, Fossilize and Cinderstorm. I don't think I mentioned the name of that skill, Cinderstorm. You get minor brutality, you get ultimate back, and you get stamina back. So I'm finding this skill pre-buffing is a lot more, it just flows a lot better than trying to force entropy into the build to not use this skill. It is expensive, but again, it lasts lasts 72 seconds, so you don't need to spam this or anything. So I think it's great. So that's the skills. As far as passives, again, just to mention how this all comes together, this gives you that additional magic return when we apply the burning effect, which comes from our fire damage and our burning spell we've set. We have the snare. This is just a damage passive. These are just, increasing the damage automatically. As I said, we don't block a ton, so we're not taking huge advantage of this. This is key to keep those skills up, to keep this 12% healing received, which again stacks with the powered Resto Staff. Health recovery, this is not so great. Dragonknight does have this range passive. All our melee skills have a range of 7 meters instead of 5, which is kind of noticeable sometimes. As you can see here, 7 meters, it's supposed to be 5. So that is nice. I do find that I can whip people from pretty far away. So that's a decent passive. And then just more physical and spell resistance. And then, as I mentioned, things last longer. This is the key skill and why we depend on our, Dragonnight's ultimate use on a Dragonknight provides you sustain and healing that other classes do not get. I've mentioned this passive is very important. That's why we use some of the skills we're using. And again, stamina return on a class, on a character build that does not have a huge stamina pool. The dual wield passives, you want all of these. They just provide some little pseudo execute, more damage. This gives you more weapon damage, which is important actually for this build, as is this. We're using maces, so we're getting the penetration. And then the damage bonus when we stun people. And we have a nice stun on demand, as I mentioned, with Fossilize. What else? All your armor I'm not going to go into all of these, but you should obviously have all of them. The rest of the staff, I did mention the important ones. The resource return. The rest of them just increase your healing and do some nice things. Get all your armor passives. None of this really applies to us. Does this work anymore? No, you have to have a fighter's. Yeah, so none of these apply. Kind of irrelevant. Undaunted, obviously, you want for more resources. All of these are important, of course. More weapon damage. So this is how we get to like 8,000. This helps as well with recovery. More ultimate. And we're not using many long range abilities, but these are, you should have all these passives: combat medic, battle restoration. And then just a word about the race again. You get a nice fat 1% experience bonus if you're trying to grind CP or something. This provides stamina sustain for us, which is nice. Unfortunately, the bottom part there we're not really taking advantage of. So this is why I would not say high elf is the best race for this build, but it's not bad by any means. More magic, and this is why we're using it primarily. More weapon damage. Obviously, you want medicinal use to make your potions last longer. As far as champion points go, I'm going to go through this very quickly. This video is getting a bit long. Green tree is whatever, personal preference. Take some speed and things like that. For the blue tree, I decided to go all damage. We're just forget defense. We dropped Ironclad and Duels rebuff. We're going to buff every damage type rather than choose which type of damage we want to buff. We're going to buff direct damage, single target damage, and AoE damage. So every single one of our skills, I think, is dipping into at least into 2 out of the 3 of these. For example, leap is getting buffed by this and this, and every other skill is double dipping. So we're getting, because they nerfed them by 4%, they used to be 10%. So I decided to just take all 3, full send, full damage, and then Untamed Aggression for additional weapon damage, buffing our damage even further, as well as our healing. If you feel you need more defense, you could drop this and take Ironclad. That would be my recommendation there. And then in this tree, a lot of useful things in this tree, but we went with, our health was a bit too low, I think, without this. We don't get any racial health bonus, no set health bonus, so we need some health. I decided to go for defense here with more armor. Pain's Refuge gives you a lot of damage mitigation depending on how many status effects you have on you. And then this, when you get stunned by someone going for the burst combo, it gives you a brief period of damage mitigation to prevent you from being deleted instantly. So you could argue for other things like dropping Fortified for Survival Instincts, for example, if you felt you needed more sustain. I don't think it's necessary. So those are the main CP that I'm going with. After you take your 4 slottables, which are the most important because they're the most powerful stars, you want to prioritize things like piercing and then the rest of this area here, because these will give you increased chance to proc status effects as well as more weapon and spell damage. Other important things are the more stamina and more magicka ones. After that, I would take preparation for 10% damage reduction from guards. Following that, I would take the rest of these things: quick recovery, elemental aegis, hardy, and then blessed. Those are all 2%, very minor bonuses to healing and damage reduction. Nice to have, but things to prioritize last. In the red, you want to start probably over here with the increased blocking and block cost reduction, hasty for more speed, cost reduction for sprinting, roll dodging and breaking free, along with your health here. Those are the things I would prioritize first, and then go to these bashing passives. And finally, after that, These are expensive and the least useful in my opinion. Stealth detection and resurrection buff. So take those last. So here we come to the Drew testing area to kind of show the mechanics of the build and our buffs and things and how high our weapon damage can get. Unlike PC, we don't have an add-on that would conveniently show our weapon damage on the screen and we could just watch it go up and down. But this build with major and minor brutality, major and minor courage, our weapon glyph, and continuous attack, and the 3 Seething Fury stacks. If you recall, every time you do this, you get a stack of Seething Fury, which adds 100 weapon damage, so up to 300 total. Continuous attack passive is after you capture a resource or a keep, you get an additional 10% weapon damage. So we're gonna get up to like 8,000, maybe even a little more than that in Cyrodiil. Around here we'll get about 7,800. So that's a spike, and it's not gonna last very long. You're not gonna be that high all the time by any means, but that's the peak potential of the build, which is buffing your healing and your damage. But to say that you're going to be around 6,500 fairly consistently, maybe even 7,000 is not untrue. So you're going to have between 6,000 and 7,000 weapon damage, you know, a decent amount of the time. And occasionally you're going to go higher, 7,500, 7,700, 7,800, and maybe even above 8,000 with continuous attack, 8,000, 8,200, something like that. If it's really 10%, and my math is correct. But I'm going to try to show you. So we get, as I mentioned, major resolve and minor resolve just from doing that. So we have those nice resistances, 29,000 spell resistance and 26,000 physical resistance. Your combo is, you know, this guy's gonna die before anything. So let me try to show you. I wish these things would respawn. I was killing them before for practice. It's not that easy to show this. But to proc major sorcery, you just do this. Major brutality and major sorcery. Minor brutality can be procced with any Earthen Heart ability, but this one conveniently gives us both in one skill. One of them lasts over a minute, the other is 20 seconds. We then have the Ola Rhyme. This shiny circle is for major courage. Minor courage comes from Magma Incarnate, just healing yourself. Right there. I think. Did it work? I'm not sure it went off. No, I didn't. Let's try again. Take some damage. Come on. I'm healing myself too quickly. It's got to be a single target heal, I believe. Yeah, so it's got to be coagulating blood, basically. Come on, hit me. There we go. Minor courage, major courage, Seething Fury, 3 stacks, 2, 3, get our glyph to go. Oh, come on, the monster died. I didn't capture it, okay. God damn it, this is annoying, because I have to like get to the screen quickly. So we proc this. The creature died. That's why the Druids were better. $7,900 weapon damage. There, you see it right there. So we're already at almost 8,000, and we don't have continuous attack, so clearly we get above 8,000. Again, if that wasn't clear, it's your major and minor brutality, which is coming from this skill all by itself, but also anytime you cast Fossilize or Cinderstorm, you also get that minor brutality, so that's 10% more weapon damage. Major brutality is 20%, which comes from that. Then you have your back bar glyph, which is giving you 348, which is indeed buffed by major and minor brutality as well. So that number is actually higher than 348. Then you have 100 weapon damage from each of these procs. 1, 200, 300, which I believe is also increased. More than 100 by major and minor brutality. And then you have your single target heal. If you're in combat and you heal yourself, you get Minor Courage from Magma Incarnate, which is another 215, buffed again by Major Minor Brutality. And then finally you have your Olarime, which is giving you an additional, what is it, 300 and something or other. Let's see. 430, my mistake, it's even higher than I thought. And buffed again on top, it's more than 430 because it is, I believe, buffed by Major and Minor Brutality. And then you have Continuous Attack, which adds 10% on top of all of that, which I can't even show you because I'm not in Cyrodiil at the moment. So obviously, you're not going to be at 8,000 anywhere near 100% of the time, but you will have spikes to 7,500, 7,800, 8,200 even, maybe even higher with Continuous Attack, and you'll consistently be, you know, in the 6,000 to 7,000, maybe even 7,400-ish weapon damage range on a fairly consistent basis with occasional spikes beyond that. So the point is you have a lot of weapon damage, which buffs your healing and buffs your damage, and that's how this build is able to kill people and survive because it's buffing your heals. So that's really what I wanted to show you. As far as like combinations, when you go into combat, you want to have your buffs up, which is Igneous Weapon. I'm getting confused. Is it Igneous or Molten? I think it's Igneous. Igneous Weapons, Volatile Armor, and Vigor. Keep Vigor up at all times. It's 20 seconds of Minor Resolve and a 5-second heal, but you want that up. And then you want a Light Attack to proc. You should have this up so you got one stack going and it's ready to attack automatically. Light Attack Cinderstorm to get your Olarime proc. Stun the enemy, maybe throw that on there for the healing, and you know, these creatures are not going to last long enough to really show you much, but the Light Attack to proc your glyph, get your Olarime up, make sure you walk through it. You have to walk through it. And then, you know, what you want to do ideally is you do this 3 times, then use your leap because now it's buffed by 300 spell damage, and then after you land, then your whip is still there, your Seething Fury empowered whip, which I, you know, right here, and then do that. So you want to leap first, and then finish them off with your fully procced Seething Fury Molten Whip. It's not going to work every time if your ultimate is not up, for example. You want to throw in your Fossilize in there occasionally, either at the beginning or the end. I like to Fossilize someone and then hit them with a heavy attack Blood Craze. You want to put that heal on a lot of, if you're fighting a bunch of people, put the Blood Craze on all of them if you can to get those incoming heals, and then by then you'll hopefully have figured out who's the squishiest of these opponents and who am I going to try to kill first. Maybe Fossilize them, you know, go from there. You're going to spam this and this occasionally to get, again, now your Seething Fury is ready. You can then Fossilize someone so they have to eat your Seething Fury. Maybe Fossilize and then leap, or leap and then whip. You know, change it up. Don't do the same thing every time. It'll depend a little bit on whether your ultimate is ready. Is your Seething Fury up? But, you know, this is what I'm talking about. Do this, get your stacks, stun the enemy, and then he has to eat that to the face and can't, you know, block or dodge it. Make sure you pick up heavy sacks whenever you see them. That's nice. Max level wood, okay. What else? So that, you know, that's pretty much, it's not that complicated, the combo or anything like that. You want to maybe, you know, stun him, get that heal going, get some stamina back, etc., etc. But I think you get the idea. So I think that this has been a very long video. I appreciate anyone who took the time to watch it all. Hopefully I've explained the build and how to play it. As I said, it's pretty strong. It's a lot of fun. It's not the easiest build in the world to play due to its sort of, it's not that tanky in a very tanky meta. But any comments, questions, concerns, if you think this is garbage, let me know. I will post footage very shortly. I have some battlegrounds. I haven't gotten any really, you know, Cyrodiil is very laggy. It's very hard to play. It's either empty and there's no fights, or there's people playing and it's just so laggy that it's at times almost unplayable. I will try to get some fights in Cyrodiil, but it's a lot easier. It's just a lot easier to get battleground footage, to be honest. But I will work on some Cyrodiil footage and I will post. I think I do have a deathmatch or two and some other modes, Chaos Ball and Relic running and things like that, that I will post very shortly. Thanks for watching. Peace.